You love one another, just as I have loved you. You also should love one another. I bet many of us, as I look around this congregation this morning, I don't know all of you, but I bet most of us have heard that before. We have heard that we are called to love one another, and we're called to do that as Jesus' example, following Jesus' example. And you may not be sure, but we hear an expansive part of this reading on Maundy, Thursday. This is that night when Jesus is saying to his disciples, I will not be with you much longer. But this is how you are going to continue to live. I love you. Love one another as I have loved you. I got, like many of us last night, thanks to all that helped with the yard sale, I got home and was busying about and fell asleep in my chair for a minute. Then I got up and put stuff on the grill, got stuff ready for supper. I went to sit down and turned on the news, and realized that yet again, we had 13 people shot and 10 dead in Texas. Excuse me, thank you. Where was it? What? Buffalo, New York, sorry. But we could go back. It's been in Texas. Unfortunately, we could do a history lesson here, which I won't, but we love one another as Jesus loved us, and so I turn on the news after having a lovely day, meeting new people, and talking to people that we all work together, just having a day. A ministry day, gave away a stroller to a family that was trying to figure out if they could come up with $15. And they went home with a stroller, and it was like, take it. You would have thought we'd given them $1 million. Went home feeling like, the gospel's at work around here. I bet we were all tired, but God is good. And then we found out that another 18-year-old boy, because it is easy to be so angry and scared and whatever our language is for this young man that thought it was necessary for him to get in his car and drive for 200 miles to find a city that was of heavily black population. His family's life is ruined. 18 years old. He was a baby. The older I get, the younger they become. So we hear in the gospel message this morning that we are called to love one another as Jesus loved us. And it's always important, you've all heard me say this too many times, but there's nothing happening in the world right now that hasn't happened before. History teaches us so much. Recent history, ancient history. You think it is any coincidence that Jesus thought that we as human beings wouldn't be nice to each other? I'm thinking he also thought we wouldn't get it because this is a pretty simple message. Paul Tillich, a theologian, wrote volumes. 90% of the people that read them don't get them, and when they do, at the end of it, they get to the point and they say, you know what, you really should love each other the way Jesus did. So the good news is that God, through Jesus Christ, said, let's keep this simple for people. It isn't just the ones you like. Most of you know I don't preach politics, and I'm just going to preach Jesus this morning. I'm so sad and I'm so angry. I choose life, for the record. I think life is a really good thing. But that doesn't mean you know anything about what that means to me. But what I do know about life is that life means if I want to protect my children, I need to protect them from the time they breathe also, until the time they die. I believe in protecting and caring for each other. Holy God, what else are we here for? If we can't be here to love each other, even when we don't know what that means, or try to figure out how to be nice. Most of you know a couple of my, I'm kind of a simple soul, so I have to have these little things running around in my head. So one of the things I'm always telling people is just be kind and clear. Just be kind and clear. And if somebody else will say, well, I missed your sermon. Oh, I'm like, don't worry. I say the same thing every week. What do you mean? I just say love God and play nice. But boy, it's hard. We hear the words of Paul this morning. Who was I that I could hinder God? Now that's kind of a tough reading to know what it's saying, but let me give you a little idea, because it took me quite a while to figure it out. God was saying to Peter, yes, the Gentiles love me too. Yep, and I love them too. And you need to also. So when you hear them say, come join me for dinner, say yes. And the disciples are just in a whirlwind of upset about this. What were you doing having dinner with them? I was having dinner with them because God told me to. And you know what? It was a wonderful evening. We broke bread together, we prayed together, we told each other stories about our friends and our day. And if God told me 3 times, very Trinitarian, if God told me 3 times to do such a thing, we hear from Paul, Peter saying, if God wants me to break bread with them, who am I to get in God's way? How are we getting in God's way? God has been trying to help us know this message since that night in Bethlehem when we followed the star. When the light was born, Hebrew scholars would tell you God has been trying far longer than that. But let's just, for the sake of our morning, go back to Jesus' birth. Oh, people, how is it that we can love one another? This 18-year-old boy, 18 years old. I have a son, and we do not always agree, and he thinks he knows how to push my buttons, and he will use some politician's name. I was on my way home from skiing with him one day. Kevin will appreciate this, and I can be a little opinionated, I'm sure it shocks you. And we were on the way home from skiing one day, and we had lunch, and he had gone down there. We had this whole discussion at lunch and he believed something differently about politics than I did. And we had a great talk about it, but he knew, and I was practicing what I try to preach, even though my insides were screaming. But I was listening to him, I was going, I got halfway home, and my phone dings. He's such a brat, and I don't know where he gets it from. Just kidding, Mom. Just kidding, Mom. Who are we to get in the way of God? We don't all have to think the same, but we do have to figure out how to take care of our children when they're alive. I don't even want to go down, whatever, let's just say, but let's just make life be life for today. Let's just say, yes, I am definitely for life. I am for life. I am for resurrection. I am for how is it that we can care for the other? How is it that we can make sure that people can read, that we are not so afraid? That we are not so afraid that if someone has a math book that has a picture of someone that doesn't look like you in it, it needs to be banned. I know I'm preaching to the choir, people, but sometimes we need to just remember that Jesus says to us, the way you will know about me, the way people will know you are Christian is by your love, not by our hate. How many of you went to Sunday school with them? And it doesn't matter what color Jesus was, but let's just for a minute, we had pictures of Jesus on the wall, and he was kind and loving. Let's just keep it simple for a minute. You will know Jesus, you will know God's love by the way we love one another. So often this is preached in that, you know me, like we just love one another and let's all, and it would be wonderful if we could just all celebrate that that's what we do. But right before the words, right before what I started reading today in the Bible, if you look, it says, it is night. Judas had just taken bread from Jesus. Judas was just about to go and start the story that we all know. So we know that God's grace isn't isolated to good times. And we are in Easter, and we are a resurrection people. And we hear language this morning that gives us good news about how it is we can be a resurrection people in the world, even in the midst of, to me, what feels like just hard misunderstandings. I don't even have language for it. By this, everyone will know you are a disciple if you love one another. We can do that, and we do that really well here. And many of us, as I said last week, travel with friends and colleagues and gather in circles where many of us don't always feel challenged by this. But we do need to remember at times, not just when we go home from a wonderful day at church. No, it was just a good old-fashioned church day. You know, I'm one of those weird people that still just likes good old-fashioned church days. You know, we baked cookies, we made $1,300, and there were no expenses. What?
That was a silent applause.
That's silent applause. We can applaud later. We made, and we gave people stuff that needed it. One guy got a bike and said, he was weeping, I can't wait to give this to my daughter. So at the end of the day, those are things we also need to take in and fill our spirits with and know that we are people of God, that we did spread love yesterday, that it did look like St. Thomas was open yesterday because we were. And that just because when we went home and turned on the news, at least for me, to hear that 10 more people were killed at the hands of a gun, and we are the only country in the entire world that has this problem. And I'm not just saying that as a do-gooder. My mother used to call me a do-gooder. I am a do-gooder. But I know a lot of people that own guns, that believe in the Second Amendment, that I would trust my children with, that I would trust my life with. It's just not about guns. How is it that we can be responsible in all kinds of ways? So on this morning, as we do celebrate the love and life that is God, and the love and life that is among us, how we care for each other, because we can and will and need to continue to do that, because that's what Jesus tells us to do. I also want us to pray for that city in New York, for Buffalo, and pray for that young man. There is a local theologian, she's a United Church of Christ pastor. Her name is Maureen Trabasson. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. Some of you may even know her. She's wonderful. She writes prayers all the time. And last night she posted this prayer, a prayer after the gun tragedy in Buffalo, New York. God have mercy on those weeping for beloved ones who died today in the Tops supermarket. God have mercy on those injured in body and bless those who care for them. God have mercy on those injured in mind because they were there and because they will remember their fear 20 years from now. Or because they need to go somewhere, anywhere tomorrow to buy groceries so their families can eat. Or because they feed their families by stocking produce, being a cashier, or returning carts, or filling shelves. God have mercy on every Black person in this country targeted today by a white supremacist in military-grade helmet and body armor, with a Bushmaster XM15E2S Sporter semi-automatic rifle, a Mossberg 500 pump-action shotgun, a Savage Arms Access 8P bolt action rifle. God have mercy on pastors preaching and planning funerals, churches praying and bringing food, grief counselors making themselves available for all those who need to talk, and school counselors responding to the fears of teenagers and kindergarten nightmares. Local government, law enforcement, social services preparing to do whatever is needed. For neighbors being neighbors and all the rest of us, taking the means of such death away. God have mercy.